Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I am D.
And I'm G.
We have got a lot of hot topics to go over today. We keep trying to do certain topics, and then by the time we get around to shooting what we had in mind and what we had written down for ideas, something else happens in the news. So we're going to talk a lot about the condition of President Trump today, a little debate recap more, and then some other interesting things happening with the polls. So, G-Man, going to turn it over to you. What is the latest you can give us on the president's condition?
Well, the latest is that his doctors, if you can believe his doctors, say that he could be released from the hospital as early as tomorrow morning.
Right.
So, which is kind of interesting. They've said all along that he has a mild case. His chief of staff came out yesterday and painted a whole different picture, a far less rosy picture, and indicated that Trump was in deep trouble. So, I guess it depends on which set of fake news you want to believe.
Yeah. Reports that I read said that behind the scenes on Thursday night, that that Trump was very concerned about his own condition,
Right.
nervous,
Yep.
and actually even asking people, his aides, if he was going to die, and saying, because he lost to one of his close friends, and I forget the name of the gentleman, but one of his friends from New York passed away from COVID earlier this year. And of course, his brother passed away too, and they never talked about really the reason, if there was any COVID complications with that. But Trump was nervous Thursday night because he had started to develop some symptoms, and up until he walked to the chopper Friday afternoon to Marine One, they had said that he was pushing back on his staff and on his doctors and not wanting to go to the hospital. And because of the optics it would create,
Right.
they did wait until the markets were closed. They were worried that him going to the doctor would affect the market. So they waited till the markets closed Friday afternoon. And then up until he took the steps to go out the door, they weren't sure if he was going to go. I think what the internal reporting said, what finally convinced him to go, was that his doctor told him that based on his condition, he would be going to the hospital, and it's a matter of whether he walked to the Marine One on Friday, or if he waited till Saturday or Sunday, he might be going on a stretcher and a wheelchair.
Right. And
So if you
how
want
would
to talk
those
about,
optics?
yeah, you want to talk about optics, I think it's a lot better when you have power to be able to walk yourself and be able to do it.
Right. And so, given all that, it's just, it's kind of strange that we're getting this conflicting report. I tend to go with his chief of staff, who seemed very genuine and wanting to get the real facts out. And as opposed to his doctors, which, as you and I were talking before the broadcast, you mentioned that it seemed like they were just repeating what maybe Trump dictated to them.
Yeah. It's a sad state of affairs to me, because it's just more of the same modus operandi of this White House, that they don't feel comfortable just saying the truth. I mean, Trump could help himself a lot. And, you want to think about his health, first of all, because no one wants a president to die. No one wants that to happen to anybody. I don't want anybody to die from COVID. But from a political standpoint, just leveling with the American people and talking about how tough a battle it's been, could help him politically. But when it seems like that the doctors are saying one thing and the chief of staff saying something else, and then the doctors struggled to give a straight answer on oxygen, just admitting whether the president had an oxygen infusion yesterday, just
Right.
creates a whole whirlwind of people not believing what's happening.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. So that we'll have to watch this situation and see how it develops, and see if he does get out of the hospital tomorrow, or if they keep him over for a longer stay, and how things develop. One thing we know about this virus is that it does react very differently in different people. Some people get a slight snivel and a cough, and other people get symptoms that are life threatening. So
Right.
we'll have to keep a watch on that. And so uh, let's segue over to kind of take the dire look, if you will, and speculate about what would happen if Trump becomes incapacitated, or God forbid, does die in the next week or so, what would happen? I've been asked by some friends and colleagues on the street, what would happen to the government and the November 3rd ballot if something did happen to Trump? So let's start with incapacitation. So tell us what you know about that.
Well, if the president becomes incapacitated, there's remedies within the 25th Amendment talking about what would happen if the president were to become incapacitated. There have been cases, and there was debate about this actually almost a year ago when Trump went unannounced to Walter Reed Hospital for what they described as, at the time, his press team described it as routine tests, but it was completely unannounced. No one, and they never talked about it again. It was never referenced again. And so if the president has the wherewithal when they're going to become unconscious, when George W. Bush had a colonoscopy, he actually did this and signed a letter transferring powers temporarily to Vice President Cheney. And so the same thing happened. Same thing would happen here in this case. But if he became incapacitated and lost his faculties and was not able to sign that letter, then by a vote of the cabinet, then at that point, power would be temporarily transferred to the vice president, to Vice President Pence in this case.
Right.
And so that's as far as the acting power goes. The same thing would happen in case, again, God forbid, of his death. The power would, by Constitution, would pass to Vice President Cheney, Pence. I got his Cheney on my mind.
They're a lot alike.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't remember Cheney taking orders from anybody named Mother. But
right.
So he would transfer then, and then we'll talk in a second about other cases. But at that point, what would happen with his vice president choice would be he would be able to submit to the Senate who he would choose for vice president.
Right.
And then why don't you tell us what would happen as far as the election goes?
Well, we're close enough to the election that most of the ballots have already been printed. So Trump's name would still appear on the ballot. So if you're casting your vote on the Republican side, you would actually vote for the Trump-Pence ticket. And, depending on how that turns out. So, on November 3rd or weeks later, when the election is finally decided, if the Trump-Pence ticket wins, then Mike Pence would be the president, and whoever he chooses in the next, week or so as his vice president would be the vice president, and we just move forward from there. If Biden prevails, then Pence would be the president from whatever time Trump expires until January, when the peaceful transition of power would take place.
Let me ask you this question. Is it within the Republican Party's power to pick somebody else as their presidential nominee, even though Trump's on the ballot? I'm throwing you a curveball there.
Yeah, it probably is within their power to do that. I think a lot of states would push back since they've already printed the ballots.
Right.
But there's precedent for not doing that. The most recent situation I can think of is the Senate election in Illinois that sent Barack Obama to the Senate. So his opponent was George Ryan, and the Ryan name in Illinois in Republican politics is like Bush in Texas. Even though Ryan was not part of that family, he had the name, and he had an 80% approval rating and looked to be a shoo-in to gain the seat. It was an open seat, and about 2 months before the election, it came out that he and his wife, actress Jerry Ryan, had gone to Paris to kind of see if they could put their marriage back together. And George encouraged her to get up on stage, and he took her to a sex club in Paris and encouraged her to get up on stage and perform with whoever or whatever was on stage, and she refused, and that was the end of their marriage. She came back from Paris on her own, and so once that hit, Ryan stayed in the race about 3 weeks, hoping to weather it, and he dropped out, and they put Alan Keyes in. The Republicans did, and this is one of the all-time great flops of slogans. The Republicans' ads carried the slogan, "If you're going to vote for a black man," because Keyes and Obama are both black, "if you're going to vote for a black man, you might as well vote for ours." And Obama trounced him. And so Obama went from basically running a race to try and get name recognition so he could run for attorney general in Illinois the next year, to being the U.S. senator, and then a couple of years later becoming the president. So,
Well, and that was just a quick fact check on the G-man there, just so we get our Ryans correct. That was Jack Ryan. George Ryan was the
Right.
former governor of Illinois, who ended up going to prison.
Right, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's easy to do. I'm not casting any stones. Just make
Yeah,
sure.
no. Yeah,
get
thanks for keeping me straight.
keeping you honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other national race that I thought about for as far as replacement goes was when McGovern replaced Eagleton with Sergeant Shriver in 1972.
Right.
And so I think that happened early enough that they were able to change some of the ballots. And I'm not sure back then if we even had as much early voting as we do now.
Yeah, probably not.
And
But-
especially this year with as many mail-in ballots and things like that. So, and I don't think that Republicans would necessarily want to relitigate that and try to open it up to we don't have a parliamentary system where you're voting for party, you're voting for a candidate.
Right. Yeah. So the takeaway is that, in most of these cases, when they try to substitute candidates, it basically backfires on them. So I think the Republicans, God forbid if something did happen to Trump, which nobody wants that, if something did happen, I think they would be, shooting themselves in the foot to replace Trump with Pence. I mean, replace Pence with somebody else.
Right. No, I agree.
Yep.
I agree with that. Which leads me to a couple other points to make real quick, because the 25th Amendment also has a clear line of secession in the Constitution.
Yes.
We're both Trump and God forbid Pence as well, but Pence has been around Trump quite a bit, as you would expect with the campaign and the governing as well.
Right.
So if both of those were to become incapacitated, at that point, the next in line for secession would be Speaker of the House. And we know that that's held in Democratic hands now.
Right.
And so the interesting thing would be it'd have to take a vote of the cabinet for that to happen. If they were just incapacitated. If God forbid they both were passed away, then it would automatically happen and there wouldn't be any choice from the cabinet. But if they were incapacitated temporarily, power would go with a vote of the cabinet to the Speaker of the House. And it would be interesting to see if the cabinet would follow the Constitution or if they would just try to ignore it.
Yeah, my guess is, as you and I were talking off air, my guess is they would totally ignore it. And
Right.
And I believe, as we were talking, you pointed out the next in line is Republican Chuck Grassley.
Right. Speaker
so-
pro tem, the pro tem of the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
my-
So interesting times that we're having these kinds of discussions, and pretty ironic considering, not really if you study the history, but President Trump and candidate Trump both had the really strong habit of projecting things about themselves onto others. And he's been talking about, former Vice President Biden as not being in good health. And it's ironic that it came around to this.
Right.
But I don't think anyone's surprised because Trump's been pretty brazen about not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And about having events where people aren't required to wear masks. So.
Yeah. Well, and if he does get out and they release him, which he's supposed to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, we'll see how that holds. But if he does go back on the campaign trail, it'll be interesting to see what he does at his events and whether he starts requiring people to wear masks and, or if he even gets back out on the campaign trail. So
there's pretty strong doubt whether we'll have any more presidential debates at this point too.
Yeah, that was my initial takeaway. when this occurred, I basically thought this was Trump's out for not doing the other two debates.
Right.
So
Speaking of debates, that's a good
Right.
segue for us. I think we
Right.
both were going. That segue was so easy. We both were going for it.
Yep.
But big debate this coming Wednesday night, still on tap right now, is the vice presidential debate. How important is that?
Well, given the health and the age of these two guys, I think this debate is paramount to deciding who you're going to vote for.
Right.
I mean, both Harris and Pence appear to be in good health. Like you said, we don't know for sure about Pence since he has been around Trump a lot, and sometimes it takes this virus a few days to manifest. So even though Pence is testing negative now, will that change in the next few days? Who knows? But it'll be interesting to watch and see if we do have a debate and how they do.
Right. Yeah. It already had a lot of importance, simply just because of the personalities. When Biden selected Kamala Harris as his running mate, it got a lot of excitement in the Democratic base. And so people were looking forward to it and looking forward to it being a pretty strong dogfight. She's a former prosecutor, former attorney general. She's really strong on judiciary as well. And so it's going to be interesting. Everybody was looking forward to it anyway, but now, like you said, renewed importance to the debate with candidates both in their 70s and one of them being diagnosed now with coronavirus. It makes it really important because each of these people are going to be one heartbeat away from the presidency. So what do you look for in the debate? Do you think Harris comes out swinging and Pence plays a lot of defense?
Well, I look for it to be a lot more civil than the first presidential debate. That's one thing.
Pretty low bar.
Right. And, Kamala is, she's a bulldog. I mean, when she's on the, when she's grilling those judiciary candidates, there's no holds barred. I mean, she's civil, but she makes it known that, she's the one in charge and, she's asking the questions and, you better give her satisfactory answers or you're going to face her wrath. And, Pence is a little more cerebral, if you will. And so I look for Kamala to win this debate going hands down.
Yeah, I think Mike Pence's goal probably going in is to just survive the debate,
right,
and run out the clock. I think he will spend a lot of time answering the question that he wished the moderator would have asked him. I think he'll try not to. I don't think he'll try to spar with her much because
right.
I think he knows he'll lose that.
Yeah.
There's also always, Biden faced the challenge in 2008 against Sarah Palin. There's always a challenge in how you come across in a debate with, man versus woman. There's a little bit of a challenge there. Yep. Like I said, I'm with you. The odds-on favorite in this thing is Kamala. I think she, not just judiciary candidates, but when she grilled Bill Barr on the Judiciary Committee, holy cow! I mean, she has a great way of doing it. Now, the question is, I haven't done enough research to see what format it's going to be, but we'll see. I think it's Kristen Welker is is that right? Is she the moderator from NBC News, I believe?
I'm not sure who the moderator is. Let me check while we're talking.
So after the Chris Wallace performance, there's going to be intense scrutiny of the moderator this time. But I do believe, unless I'm mistaken, I believe it is Kristen Welker. But this could be the last debate of the campaign.
Yeah, it could be. Very well could be. Yeah.
Could be the last debate. Trump was already pushing back before he had been diagnosed with coronavirus about he wasn't going to accept any rule changes as far as microphones or anything like that. But from a safety and health standpoint, I don't really see them getting together. Maybe there'll be a virtual debate. Who knows?
Right. Looks like Susan Page is going to be.
Susan Page. Okay.
Yeah, from USA Today.
Okay. Fantastic. She'll do a great job. She's a top-notch journalist. Yeah. But and like you said, I think both of the participants will be a lot more diplomatic than Trump was. But again, a very low bar when it comes to that.
Well, the one of the things for Harris is I don't think she needs to be tough, but she can't be rude. If she's
Right.
rude like Trump was, then the shoe's on the other foot this time around, and Democrats will lose their momentum.
Right. Yep. Yep. Let me ask you this question related to going back to the Trump illness. It made me think of, what do you think is going to happen with, since we talked about Judiciary Committee, what do you think is going to happen with Amy Coney Barrett's nomination now that the Senate, Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch, actually suspended Senate business for 2 weeks, yet he says they're going to still have the judiciary hearing virtually.
Right. Well, I think that Republicans are hell bent on pushing this nomination through, and I think Mitch McConnell will do whatever he can do to get it done. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Senate rules require these votes to be in person.
You're correct. And when the Democrats sought to change those rules a while back, Moscow Mitch, I believe, was against that.
Right.
Fought
So
against
it'll be interesting to see how he flip-flops and if what result, if any, it would have on his reelection campaign. Right now he's enjoying a pretty comfortable lead over Amy McGrath and his what is probably his last Senate election, and but something like this could really sour the voters and make them turn against him. So we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, a couple of interesting points about this is there's going to be a lot of timing issues when it comes to this, because if they do have the vote, and if they, let's say they were to have the vote tomorrow, I know they're not going to, but let's say they were, you've got 3 Republican senators, Tom Tillis, Mike Lee, and who's the third one that tested positive? There's a third one that tested positive. I'm drawing a blank on that, but you've got 3 Republican senators who tested positive that would not be able to be, that are in quarantine now and would not be able to be present for a vote.
Right.
The Oklahoma senator, James Lankford's actually in a self-quarantine right now. He's not released if he's tested positive for COVID, but he did have a meeting with Mike Lee late last week.
Right.
And, so right now he wouldn't have the votes to win.
Yeah, because those Democrats are going to vote as a block, and you've already got Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, who's she's now the underdog in that race. Sarah Gideon has taken the lead in that Senate race, but both of them have already said they don't want to have a vote, so they would conceivably vote against it, and so then you've got enough votes to derail the nomination.
Ron John's the other one. Ron Johnson from Wisconsin is the other one who tested positive. So timing, and you start to get to where you're butting right up against the election at that point. I mean, you look at the calendar, they start the hearings a week from tomorrow, which is the 12th, and they were hoping to have the vote the week of the 19th. And when you start looking at after that, if it was to push a week later, you're in the week of the 26th, and then the following Tuesday after that's the election.
Right.
So
I mean, but McConnell could bring the Senate back in. They could vote on it, Monday afternoon or even Tuesday morning, and swear her in that afternoon, and she'd still be eligible to swing the election one way or the other. I don't understand what their angst is over this. I mean, they've got 5. The vote now is 5-3, unless I guess you count on the Republicans aren't counting on Chief Roberts to do the right thing in their minds. So I guess they look at him as sort of a wild card, and the vote would be 4-4.
Yeah, I think it depends on. I think the big reason they feel like they need that extra vote is because what you said, Roberts. But I also don't think they think they can win in the Court of Appeals.
Yeah, well, wouldn't they? I'm trying to think back to Bush v. Gore. Didn't they just fast track that to the Supreme Court?
They did, but you got to have the votes to be able to take the case too. If it's 4-4, then you go with the lower court decision. So,
Right.
but yeah, it's an interesting time. And like I said, with you've got an ill president, you've got a tight calendar, and then you're trying to jam through a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. I think it's really, really bad optics for the Republicans. It was already bad, and
Yeah.
now it seems to be getting worse.
Yeah. Well, and then there's pushback now on her candidacy. I noticed 1,000 of her undergrad colleagues have signed a letter saying they're very concerned about her getting a lifetime appointment. So
She also there was some disclosure issues because they're supposed to disclose any writings or anything that they've signed on to, and she did not disclose in her Senate confirmation last time, or she didn't list it this time in an advertisement that she had signed from, I believe it was South Bend Citizens for Life,
right.
saying that she opposed Roe v. Wade and supported the overturning, and called it, quote, barbaric too. So their defense on that is they said, well, it's not a writing that she did. It's not an op-ed or a letter to the editor or a paper, anything like that. But that seems to be splitting hairs to me.
Right. Still shows where where your opinion lies and what everybody says, and we'll get to this in just a minute with Lindsey Graham, head of the Judiciary Committee, that we don't know her views, but yes, we certainly do, and it's because of things like that and things that she said that make people that support Roe v. Wade, which is currently the law of the land, they're worried that the first thing she's going to do is overturn that, and there actually are 2 cases that are going to be before the court this year that could actually do that, could overturn Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
So
speaking of Lindsey Graham, let's talk a little bit. He had his first debate, and I'm not sure if they're scheduled to have another one, but with Jamie Harrison, his opponent, last night in South Carolina. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, well, they did have their first debate, and it may be their only debate, judging from what I saw. I didn't get to see the whole thing, but what I did see was a very polished Jamie Harrison taking on a very agitated Lindsey Graham. So if you haven't been following this race, it's in deep red southern South Carolina, and it's Graham has been the senator there for a long time, and Jamie Harrison is this upstart who's raised just bukus of money. I think he got I think I saw that he raised about $4.5 million from the start of the debate until about an hour afterward, which is just a phenomenal amount in a short period of time. And the polls currently have it pretty close. The last one I saw was 48-48. So, the little bit I saw, Graham looked very agitated. He seemed like a guy who was very worried about his political future, and rightfully so if you believe the poll numbers. And I thought Jamie Harrison did a wonderful job. Like I said, I haven't seen the whole debate, so I can't say if he won it or not. Did you get to see the whole thing, D?
I would say I probably watched 90% of it on tape. Couple of big points to me. First of all, Jamie Harrison brought a plexiglass barrier between he and Graham, and wore a mask in, and talked about the importance of coronavirus. And while some people might think that's theatrics, he talked about the fact that he has 2 young sons at home, a wife at home, and they also take care of his grandmother who raised him.
Right.
And he's very concerned about that. I think that's going to be one of the big issues in the closing of the campaign. It's going to be the seriousness that people took when it came to coronavirus.
Right.
Because the fact that you had Republicans, including President Trump, going ahead and holding events, holding meetings, even after they knew they were exposed. Amy Coney Barrett's announcement in the Rose Garden is being viewed by most accounts as the super spreader event that may have spread this whole thing across the Republican establishment, because there are people there not wearing masks, shaking hands, kissing cheeks, hugging, all those kinds of things.
Right.
And so Harrison brought the plexiglass, and then on the SCOTUS nomination and on the fact that Lindsey Graham had said multiple times that he would not bring a vote in Trump's last year. And his defense was that Democrats were so mean to Brett Kavanaugh, and that even Jamie Harrison, when he was in D.C. working for Jim Clyburn, opposed, Neil Gorsuch's nomination. And of course they opposed Gorsuch's nomination because that should have been Merrick Garland's seat.
Yep.
And so they want to forget that part of the element. But Graham said, that Amy Coney Barrett's going to be on the court and she's going to be appointed. And he said it after Kavanaugh or after the Kavanaugh hearings. And Jamie Harrison pointed out that when he gave his speech at the Atlantic conference and said, hold the tape, use my words against me. That was well after the Kavanaugh nomination that he said that. And so Jamie looked at him and said, why don't you just man up and admit that you flip-flopped? Right. And it was a powerful moment. And you could see Lindsey Graham feel the heat on that one. And I think we're going to see that clip played over and over. And Jamie did a good job of refocusing everything back on the people of South Carolina and what it meant to the people of South Carolina. And what an Amy Coney Barrett nomination means to all the people in South Carolina that have pre-existing conditions when ACA could be overturned and things like that. So I thought it was a big win for Jamie. Like you said, he's already fundraised the heck out of it. Lindsey's really coming across real whiny. He's been on Fox News all week saying people hate me and I need your help, and go to my website and give $5 if you can because they're raising millions against me. And last time I spent $2 million on the whole campaign, and the other side's already spent, has already raised 100 million, all these things he's talking about. But you know what? If you play with fire, you get burned.
Yeah. And I think when you make pleas like that, when you basically show desperation, I think that turns people off.
I did too. And I think that was the turning point about a month ago for Martha McSally when she said that families should fast and miss a meal and take that money and give it to her campaign.
Right. Yeah. Nobody in their right mind is going to do that.
No, absolutely not. And so when you make a desperate plea, you come across as desperate. And so that's going to be, if the Democrats pull that seat off, that's a huge win, and I think a virtual lock on them picking up the Senate.
Yeah, well, and we'll have another podcast before the election about the, probably the week of, about the Senate races and where they're headed. But everything I'm seeing right now has a strong uptick for the Democrats. Now, there's a long time to go before the election, so anything could happen. Even the last week, something can happen to change the electorate, as we saw in the 2016 election. So Democrats shouldn't get too cocky. They should keep doing what they're doing, making those calls, trying to get out the base, and making sure people have access to get their votes in. And we've already seen some shenanigans on the part of the Republicans. I think Texas Governor Greg Abbott just changed the rules down there, right?
Yeah, I think we talked about that last time, but he closed some ballot boxes and said that drop-off boxes, it was only going to be one per county. And
right.
You're from Texas, and I've spent a lot of time in Texas. Counties are pretty big areas.
Oh yeah, there's
like a borough in New York.
Yeah, they say everything's bigger in Texas. That it's a huge state. Some of the counties are hundreds of miles across. You take Dallas County. If they put it in downtown Dallas for the drop off, where I grew up in southeast Dallas, there's no way, my grandparents would have driven downtown just to drop off their ballot. They would have stuck it in the mail, and then who knows where that's going to go, right? Yeah. So a lot to consider in the next few weeks, and we'll see how the news plays out, and we'll keep watch on all these things and update them as they go along, and it's going to be a fun, bumpy ride, I think.
Yeah, we're right at I think we're right at 30 days now.
Yeah.
So everybody, like the G-Man said, get out and vote, do your patriotic duty. This is everybody says it every 4 years, but this literally is the most important election of our lifetime. I believe that.
I do too.
And 4 years from now, hopefully I won't even have any reason to even say that. Hopefully it'll be back to an election based on conservative versus progressive ideas,
Right.
with decent people running against each other and running a campaign saying, may the best ideas win. But this, with the authoritarian bent of this administration, this is an important election.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, have a great time and enjoy this podcast. We'll see you real soon. Everybody stay safe, wear a mask if you're out.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see you next time. Good night.